What's up, y'all? It's the Raw Prospect Podcast. We're gonna give y'all a couple minutes to join in real quick. And then we'll get right to it. What's up? We're waiting a few more minutes for everybody to get in here. While you're here, though, hit the like button, hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Subscribe. I'd say 2 minutes and 30 seconds. We're going to start. All right, let's start. We're going to start off today with some college basketball talk. Then we're going to transition into our Week 16 NFL picks. And then we'll talk some NBA.
What's up, y'all? I'm here. I know Emmy's been talking most of the time, but I am here.
Yep.
As y'all know, we don't do college basketball is not one of our main focuses on this podcast, but we're going to do some today. What we're going to do is we're going to power rank the Power 5 conferences, and then we're going to give you our top candidates for National Player of the Year again. Now 1 month, a little over a month into the season. So I say we started off by going through our power rankings of the conferences. We can just alternate. I guess we'll start at number 5. Who do you have at number 5?
At number 5, I have the SEC.
Okay.
Extremely top heavy. Kentucky is Kentucky, as we know. They're gonna start slow. They're full of freshmen. They're gonna make their run in March. So they get point. The SEC gets points there because they have a consistent team threatening to make the Sweet 16 every year. And then you have teams like Ole Miss. They're okay. They're not great. But I don't really have that much to say other than that.
Okay. I slightly disagree here. I put the Pac-12 at number 5. So what I did is I have teams. I separated the teams in each conference into really 3 separate categories: title contenders, second weekend teams, which means they can make the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8,
Mhm.
and then just tournament teams who will probably make the tournament but won't go past the first weekend. So in the Pac-12, I only see 3 or 4 tournament teams. I see 3 or 4 teams that could make the tournament. Maybe one an Oregon team that can maybe go past the first weekend. Those teams are Oregon, Arizona State, UCLA, and maybe Arizona. I only see 3 to 4 teams making the tournament out of this conference. The Pac-12 is performing, believe it or not, like a mid-major league. Only 2 teams in the conference have fewer than 3 losses, Colorado and Arizona State. And entering this week, the Pac-12 as a whole has a 3-21 record against KenPom top 50 opponents, which is horrible. Kansas, Michigan, Michigan State each have 4 top 50 wins by themselves, and Indiana has 5 such victories. This conference is troubling. I don't see a lot of teams making the tournament, and that's why I put them at 5.
All right.
So who do you have at 4?
4 for me. I kind of had to give a shout out to a non-Power 5 conference. I put Big East / Big Ten. You can switch them out 3 and 4 for me. You got teams like Creighton, Seton Hall, and Villanova, and those are all teams that have the talent to make the Sweet 16, in my opinion.
I agree with that. Keep going.
And then with the Big Ten, obviously you've got Michigan, elite defensive team. You got Ohio State, Wisconsin, Purdue, Michigan State, which in terms of BPI are all projected to be top 20 teams going into March based on their schedules. So for me, you can switch them out. So either or.
All right. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I didn't take the Big East into consideration since we're only doing really since I only really did Power 5 conferences. But I will tell you this: if I wasn't just looking at the Power 5 conferences, I'd probably put the Big East above the Pac-12, and maybe, they're probably tied with the SEC, but maybe even above the SEC. But as far as my number 4 goes, I have the SEC. I see one title contender as of right now. It could definitely change. I see only one title contender in the SEC right now. That's Tennessee. I think teams like Auburn and Kentucky right now, as it stands right now, are kind of on the fringe of being title contender or not. But they're going to have, I think, Auburn, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Florida could all go past the first weekend. And I think LSU and Arkansas are also going to be in the tournament. And even they could probably pull off some upsets and go to the second weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the SEC has been good, but I expected it to be better earlier in the season. What's really surprising is South Carolina and Texas A&M have both opened the season in the KenPom top 50 and were expected to be tournament teams. But right now they have a combined record of 8-9 with only one KenPom top 190 victory all season between the two of them.
Wow.
I expected Vanderbilt to be better, but their season has been derailed by injuries to key players. LSU isn't, while they still make the tournament, they're not living up to their potential, and Alabama hasn't either with head coach Avery Johnson. I think Kentucky has way underperformed, although it's Kentucky. They'll probably get it together later in the season. However, I think teams we kind of overlooked, like Mississippi State. They're 9-1. They've been playing great, and Ole Miss has been a pleasant surprise. They're 8-2. I think the SEC is going to send about 8 or 9 teams to the tournament this year. They just haven't been as good as I expected them to be, and that's why they're at 4th.
I completely forgot about Tennessee. I haven't really paid attention much to the SEC this year, to be honest. When I was making my list, I was just considering the teams that were popping up in my head right away, So
yeah, since you kind of mentioned the Big Ten and the Big East as your kind of 3 and 4, I'll go ahead and do my number 3. This might surprise you because I'm an ACC guy and I watch a lot of ACC basketball, but I'm putting the ACC at 3. I still see the ACC putting 9, maybe 10 teams in the tournament this year.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom 20% of the ACC, meaning like teams like Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, and Boston College, they're far behind the bottom half of the Big Ten and the Big 12, which are the conferences I have above the ACC. I still see Duke, Virginia, and North Carolina as title contenders. I see Virginia Tech, Florida State, and even NC State, who just beat Auburn last night, as teams that could go past the first weekend. And I see Syracuse, Louisville, Clemson, and Miami also making the tournament. The strength at the top of the ACC is incredible. I don't think any league can say they have more strength in terms of like the top of the conference, with Duke, Virginia, and North Carolina all ranking the top 5 in the KenPom rankings. But I just think the bottom half of this conference isn't as strong as the bottom half of the other 2 conferences I have above them, and that's why I have them at 3.
Okay, that's fair.
So who do you have at 2 and 1? Go ahead.
I have the ACC at number 2 for a lot of the same reasons you said. The reason I have them at 2 and not 3 is because they have their top is better than what the Big Ten has to offer, in my opinion. Virginia and Duke, the other teams that can win the ACC and maybe even get a 1 seed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And also 2 teams that have the talent to make the Final Four. If you look at Virginia, what they've lacked in is shooting the last 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they have this guy shooting 47% from deep.
Yeah.
They're a different team this year.
I can see, it's interesting with Virginia. I kind of sidetrack here, but this year is only the second year with Tony Bennett, and Tony Bennett's been the coach at Virginia. I mean, he's fantastic, but he's been the coach at Virginia for this will be his 9th season. And this is only the second time they're averaging over 70 points. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Their offense is more explosive. As long as they can stay healthy, if they can shoot like they're shooting now in the tournament, which has been their downfall the past 4 or 5 years, they can go, they're national title worthy, and they can go as far as winning it all.
Yeah.
And same with Duke.
100%. Yeah. The key with them is just peaking at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. And like last year, I think they peaked at the wrong time. They peaked, mid-February, early March instead of, at the ACC tournament going into the NCAA tournament. They peaked a little too early.
Right.
My number 2 is the Big Ten. I look at this conference. They have 2 title contenders, Michigan and Michigan State. Pretty sure everyone knows that.
Mm-hmm.
Teams I can see going to the second weekend. Wisconsin's been very good. I think their only loss was to Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong, but that was one of their only losses. Purdue's been very good. Carson Edwards is balling again. Nebraska has been a pleasant surprise. They're in the top 25 for the first time in a while. Indiana's always up there.
Yeah.
Trying to make runs. And Ohio State's been playing very well as of late.
Right.
And then other tournament teams, Maryland, very competitive, very scary when they shoot the ball well. Iowa, Penn State, Northwestern are some of the others. First of all, Michigan State, Iowa, and Minnesota all won their mini neutral site tournaments during Thanksgiving week. And both Wisconsin and Nebraska made the championship games of their tournaments before losing to opponents which are still undefeated. Wisconsin, as I mentioned, who lost to UVA. Remember earlier when I said the Pac-12 has 3 combined wins against KenPom top 50 opponents? The Big Ten has 27. 8 of those wins coming in against KenPom top 25 teams. That's incredible at this point in the season. Yeah. They also have 10 teams in the top 45 of the latest net rankings, while no other conference has been 6. Last year was kind of a disappointment for the Big Ten. They only sent 4 teams to the NCAA tournament. They've never ever sent more than 7 teams to the tournament, believe it or not, in the history of the conference. But this year, I could see 9 to 10 teams making the tournament. That's how strong this conference is. So, who's your number 1?
My number 1 is the Big 12.
And I have the same thing. Why is that?
For me, it's just the depth.
Yeah.
From top to bottom, the worst team in the conference is still extremely competitive and talent.
Sure. From the Big 12, I had 2 title contenders once again, Kansas and Texas Tech. Texas Tech is playing really well right now. They're actually playing Duke right now. I don't know if they won or lost that game. It's probably over by now, but either way, Texas Tech has been incredible so far this year. Second weekend teams, I have Iowa State and K-State. K-State has kind of been a disappointment so far, but they've been in when they get healthy, they'll get back to where they were last year. Tournament teams, I have TCU, Oklahoma, Texas, and West Virginia. For the 6th consecutive year, the Big 12, I think, is in great shape to have the best regular season. Kansas is ranked in the top. They're ranked number 1, and they have Final Four potential national title aspirations. Texas Tech, I think, will be a stiff challenger and finish 2nd in the conference. They're 10-0 right now. They may have lost to Duke, but Duke is incredibly talented, as we've talked about in previous podcasts. I think Chris Beard should be an early front runner for Coach of the Year. And I'll mention one of their players when we talk about National Player of the Year candidates, Jarrett Culver. He's another story. Mm-hmm. West Virginia is the only team in the conference that does not have at least 1 win against the KenPom top 100 opponent. And I think they still make the tournament because they're that good. Mm-hmm. Texas has 3 wins against KenPom top 100. Oklahoma has 5. Kansas has 9 wins against top 150 opponents. Wow. The Big 12 has quality competition from top to bottom. I think it beats out any other conference as far as Power 5 conferences go, and probably mid-majors too. And I think they could send 8-9 teams to the NCAA tournament, which is incredible.
Yeah. The thing with the Big 12, though, is in their conference schedules, there's more with more competition. That means more blemishes on resumes, which means lower seed, which makes a big difference.
That is very true. So we'll just have to see what happens. But I think we both agree so far. Mm-hmm. The Big 12 is probably the best. The Big 10 and ACC could probably interchange those if you wanted to.
Right.
I didn't really talk about the Big East, but they're certainly probably in this conversation and ahead of the Pac-12. And then SEC has been good. They've just kind of underachieved so far. So that's kind of the summary there. But now I think we'll transition. We'll finish up some college basketball talk with our National Player of the Year watch. So, Emmy, you can start us off by giving your couple players that you think are in good position to win it 1 month in.
All right. I actually have 5 players I wanted to mention.
Okay, I do too. So go ahead.
At number 1, I have Zion Williamson. The reason for that is it's just that he draws viewers to the sport. He moves the needle. And I just think the voters will reward that. And also, the stats speak for themselves. He averages 20.1 points per game, 9.1 rebounds, 2.5 assists per game, 2 blocks, 2.2 steals. That's insane. And that kind of stat line, going back to 1992, no one has ever done it since the start of Basketball Reference. No one has ever had that type of stat line for an entire season.
Wow. All right, keep going. I didn't even know that. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Number 2, Rui Hachimura. The only problem with him being at 2 for me is you could argue that he wasn't even the best player in their big wins. You could argue that it was Zach Norvell or somebody else. But I have him here because as of right now, I feel like he has the biggest signature clutch moment in college basketball when he hit that shot against Duke in the late in the second half to put him up 89-87.
Yeah.
He's putting up 21.6 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, and on 56% shooting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the reason he could bounce Zion is because Zion has to deal with sharing the spotlight with RJ Barrett. If RJ Barrett starts playing better, he might make a run at the award too, and then their votes will kind of split.
All right, keep going.
Third player I want to mention, DeAndre Hunter. He's shooting 48% from deep, pretty much. That's crazy, especially and it's a team need for Virginia. He's doing what he's.
Yeah, for sure.
He's been impressive. Another player, LaGerald Vick for Kansas. Just clutch shot making ability. I think they were down 12 against who was it? They were down 12 against somebody the other day. I think they were down to Stanford, and he made like 5 threes or something like that, like 32 points.
He's one of the best shooters in the country, but keep going.
Next player would be RJ Barrett. His case takes a hit for how inefficient he was at the beginning of the year. But his last 2 games, he's 21 for 28 from the field, and he might just be figuring it out.
Yep.
And there's a lot of time for him to swipe off that blemish at the beginning of the season. We won't even remember that by March. So those are my 5 players. Those last 3 were in no particular order, but those first 2 I see as starters.
That's interesting. I can definitely see where you're coming from with Rui Hachimura. He's been incredible. Better than I thought he would ever be. But I actually didn't put him on this list, but I was very surprised you put Vic and Hunter on the list. I like you giving respect where it's due. Those are 2 great players, but I have different players than you, and that's kind of interesting. But anyway, I agree with you as far as the number 1 goes. It's Zion Williamson. It's hard to argue with that. You mentioned the statistics, 20.1 points per game, 9 rebounds, 2.5 assists. But the amazing thing about it is his efficiency. He ranks first in the nation in offensive efficiency, and he has the highest PER, player efficiency rating, of any player in the country, 43.8. No other player is higher than 40. And he's shooting at an incredible clip, 66.7% from the field. He's also one of 3 players nationally with at least 20 steals and 20 blocks so far this year. He's incredible defensively. He has incredible athleticism, incredible agility for a guy his size. If there's a guy you're going to pay to go see, the first guy you're going to pay to go see is Zion Williamson. So he's so far the front runner. Now, you mentioned LeGerald Vitt. I don't believe he's the best shooter on Kansas. There's no argument there, but I don't believe he's the best player on Kansas. That would be Dietrich Lawson. Dietrich Lawson so far this year is averaging 19.7 points per game, 11 rebounds, 2.5 assists on 50% from the field with a 32 player efficiency rating. He leads Kansas in both scoring and rebounding. As you know, Kansas is the number 1 team in the country. He's been the most consistent contributor on Kansas so far this year. Sure, LeGerald Vitt can do it, but he's kind of a streaky shooter. One game he can go, 5 for 5, 6 for 6. Another game he can kind of struggle. I think Lawson has been the most consistent, and most importantly for Lawson, the most important reason I have him at number 2 is he's shown up in the big games. When they played Tennessee a couple weeks ago, he showed up big, 24 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists. And then just last weekend when they played Villanova, 28 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, and a game which was a dogfight. So he showed up in the big games. He's been the most consistent on their team. They're number 1 in the country. And as long as he keeps doing this, he'll definitely be in the conversation come March. I put R.J. Barrett at 3, but the guy I have below him, Jarrett Culver from Texas Tech, I have probably switched them. So I'll talk about Culver first.
Okay.
Culver, if you haven't watched him, I encourage you, find a Texas Tech game, watch it on TV. This dude can score. 19.1 points, 5.7 rebounds, 4.4 assists on 58% from the field with a 33.5 player efficiency rating. I think he's the most improved player in the country, although you could argue that it's also DeAndre Hunter. Culver's scoring average is up about 8 points from last year, but that might be largely due to because Texas Tech lost 5 players in the draft, or not necessarily in the draft, but to other things too, including Zaire Smith. I think Culver is honestly better. He's been better than Smith so far. He's very skilled on defense. I think he's one of the best defenders in the country. Only Zion Williamson, I think, as far as this list goes, can match his defensively. He ranks 3rd in the Big 12 in scoring and leads his team. He's only 6'5". He leads his team in rebounding. He can do a variety of things, but his impact on the defensive side, I think, puts him over Barrett. Now, Barrett, the guy I have 4th, he's everything we thought he would be. Can flat out score the basketball. He's great in transition. He's averaging 24.5 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, shooting 48% from the field. Now, his player efficiency rating has taken a dip because, as you mentioned, he was kind of in a slump to start the season, despite that 33-point performance he had against Kentucky. His player efficiency rating isn't as high as some of these other guys, but he can shoot the 3. He can score whenever he wants. He's great in transition. It's just his defense. It can be really good when he commits to it. But sometimes he's not as consistent as some of these other guys are on defense.
Right.
And then my 5th and final guy, a guy who's not as flashy as some of these other dudes, a guy who you don't see a lot because I think his team doesn't get as much attention as it should, Ethan Happ from Wisconsin. I talked about this when we were previewing the college basketball season. He's been everything I thought he'd be. 19 points per game.
Hello? Yeah, say that again. 19 points per game?
19 points per game, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 60% from the field, 33.9, really 34 if you round it up, player efficiency rating. That's 4th in the country. He leads Wisconsin in all major categories: points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. He leads the Ken Palm Player of the Year standings. As I mentioned, he's 4th player efficiency rating. He's very efficient on the offensive side. He rebounds. He does everything for this team. And he's versatile. And he also anchors their defense, which ranks top 20 in the nation. And he averages 1.7 blocks per game. So very well-rounded player. As long as Wisconsin keeps up this level of success in the Big Ten conference play, he'll be in the conversation too.
For sure.
That concludes my list for.
And he gets some points for his leadership as well, because
Exactly.
they're back to national prominence this year.
It's been a transition period for Wisconsin since Bo Ryan retired. They kind of had to figure some things out, bring some of these younger guys in, and they haven't really gelled yet. But right now, they're starting to gel, and we're seeing that in both their record and how they just appear, the eyes on the basketball court. So there's a lot of time left, but all of these that we mentioned are great players.
Right.
We'll just have to see how it plays out come conference play, because that's when it really starts. That's when the real season starts.
Right.
So.
For sure. Everything could change in the conference play, man.
Yep. So, good conversation for college basketball. I think we should move on to our NFL predictions. What do you say?
Yeah, for sure.
Guys, the way I think this is going to work is we're not going to predict the whole. We're not going to predict the whole Week 16 slate. We're only predicting, I think, 5 games that have the biggest implications on the playoff seedings.
Right.
We're not really predicting games where there are teams who have already been eliminated participating in those games.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to predict those games first, and then I think we're going to lay out kind of how we think the NFL playoff seedings will end up as we're 2 weeks, as we have 2 weeks left in the season. So we'll start with our predictions, and then we'll talk about the playoffs. So let's go ahead and do that.
All right. Let's start with the Saturday games.
Okay.
Titans at Redskins. Titans are a 10-point favorite on the road.
Okay.
I think 10 is way too many, in my opinion. The Titans offense is banged up, and they're only averaging 20 points per game in their last 4. Jay Gruden deserves a ton of credit with this team. They could have quit after they got blown out by the Giants, but they got a hard-fought win last week against the Jaguars. But in the end, I don't know if it'll be enough. Just too many injuries. But the key here is the running game for Tennessee. The Redskins' defense is not ranked very well in run defense, but just overall, they're a very physical front seven.
Yeah.
Ryan Kerrigan, all those guys, a couple of dudes from Alabama they had drafted. I can't recall their names right now, but a very physical front seven. So that's the key matchup here. Who controls the line of scrimmage there will probably win this game. My pick, I'm picking the Titans 24-20. So I'm picking the Redskins to cover.
Yeah, I agree. Titans being favored by 10 points, I think that's a little too much. But as you mentioned, the lower scoring game, I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I'll go ahead and put my prediction out there and end up being 21-13 Tennessee.
Okay.
Look, it's unfortunate that first of all, both teams are in basically must-win situations.
Right.
So it's going to be I think it's going to be a defensive battle, but Washington, it's been unfortunate because they've had injury after injury, especially at the quarterback position, and now they have Josh Johnson leading the team.
Yeah.
But they haven't quit. They got drubbed by the Giants 40-16, but
they did score a touchdown when they put Josh Johnson in the game. So.
Exactly. But they've responded with a victory over the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars are not necessarily the Jaguars of last year, but it's still a really good defense, I would argue. So they might not have enough to win, but I think they have something about this team, their toughness about them. It's good enough to keep this game close against a Tennessee team that's also been banged up of late, especially in the offensive line. They're missing right tackle Jack Conklin, who's been out with a season-ending knee injury, which he suffered earlier this month. And one of their guards is also battling a knee injury of his own. So they're banged up on the offensive line. I think, as you mentioned, if the Washington front seven can control the line of scrimmage and get to Marcus Mariota, I think they have a chance to even win this game. But I think it comes down to I think this game will come down to Marcus Mariota making some plays with his legs late, and then Derrick Henry eventually getting in the end zone even 2 times as that Washington defense starts to wear down later in the game. And that's where I think the gap will be. And I think Washington will win 21-13.
All right. Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. Next Saturday game, Ravens at LA Chargers. This is a must-win for the Ravens, but it's going to be an uphill battle. Let's just be honest with ourselves here. The Chargers have a disciplined front seven that can keep Lamar Jackson in the pocket, and to me, that's the key in this game. I'm picking. I forgot to say the line. Chargers are favored by 4.5.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick the Chargers to win 30-24 in OT.
Wow.
I think that the Ravens know what's on the line, and they're gonna come ready to play. I think the defense will be able to get a couple turnovers, and that'll help to keep them in it. And also, the status of Keenan Allen is up in the air as of right now. He's questionable, I think, to play this week. I think Jake Ruby would know Keenan on his fantasy team. But I'm not 100% sure. But, Chargers need to keep Lamar Jackson in the pocket. And then from there, just turn him into a thrower. And that's the key to this game.
I definitely agree with your keys to the game. But listen to this. Look, Baltimore, of course, needs to win if they don't want to get overtaken by the Colts. But we'll talk about that later. If they want to keep the pressure on Pittsburgh for the AFC North. Now, they're playing the Chargers team, a team who I think is the most well-rounded in the league right now, but we'll talk about that later also. Look, it's a 4-point spread in favor of Los Angeles. Now, I agree with you. I think Baltimore is going to come out in the first half and put up a fight. It's going to be close. Look, the Chargers, the last couple of weeks, you watch them and you're like, how is this team contending for the playoffs in the first half? And in the second half, you're like, oh my God, this team is a Super Bowl contender because they're largely a second half team. But listen to this. Baltimore has, they largely rely on Lamar Jackson as a runner because he's not that great of a passer. He's only completing 59% of his passes and only averages 6.6 yards per pass attempt, which is not very good. So they rely on him to run the ball, and they've had success doing it. But the 5 NFL teams, which have surrendered 7 points per game this season. And those are the 5 teams that Baltimore has faced in defense. Chargers have yet to surrender more than on the ground to a quarterback this season, and they've played Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes twice, Josh Allen, and as you mentioned, they're going to force him to throw more. They're going to get a couple sacks, and they're going to score a couple touchdowns late, even if they're behind in the first half, and they're going to win this game. Now, the score I think will be the Chargers 26 and Baltimore 20. But I think Baltimore, I'll give you a bold prediction, I think Baltimore will be up at halftime.
Okay, so we both don't pick them to cover then.
No.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll move on. One thing though, what's your thoughts on the Josh Gordon suspension?
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I haven't really read in a lot to that story, but I know of it. Look, I don't really want to get into like what happened or why the league's suspending him or if he'll ever play football again. I don't probably think he will, but we could probably end up having a conversation on how this is going to affect New England. I don't really know. What do you think?
In terms of how it will affect New England, I don't know, because in the Steelers game, he was only targeted 3 times. I mean, early in his tenure with the Patriots, it seemed like he was growing on Tom Brady. He was starting to trust him more and more, but now it seems like it's gone backwards. And part of me feels like maybe the Patriots knew something we didn't before that game. Maybe that's why they weren't throwing it to him.
Maybe. I think the Patriots knew eventually this day could come where Gordon gets in trouble again. But, I thought it was working, starting to work well a couple weeks ago. But past 2 weeks, it hasn't really clicked. And maybe that's a result of this, as he mentioned, or maybe it's just he's not what he used to be.
Maybe.
It's unfortunate he's had this many incidences with this type of stuff. It's unfortunate he'll never play football again. Maybe the talent that he is, but it is what it is. And Patriots got to move on. Gordon's got to move on with his life, get better mentally, physically.
Yeah,
that's all that matters, really.
Yeah, just beyond football, just I wish the best for him with his mental health.
Yeah, for sure.
He's got a tough road ahead. I'll say that. With that, we'll move on. Texans at Eagles. Eagles 2.5 point favorite at home.
Look, this is what I'll say about this. First of all, historical statistics don't really have much bearing on who generally wins in a matchup currently. But Houston or any team, any NFL team from Houston had never beaten Philly. They're 0-4 when they face the Eagles. That's just a stat for y'all to know. I don't think it has any bearing on this game, but I'll just put that out there.
Still interesting, though.
Look, I think the Eagles are going to be one of the more fascinating teams to watch these last 2 weeks of the season, if not the most fascinating, because they're in must-win situations. And they have Nick Foles playing quarterback now, the team that got him to the Super Bowl last year once Carson Wentz tore his ACL. So I like the Eagles to win this game, and I'm actually picking them to sneak into the playoffs as the 6th seed, believe it or not, but we'll talk about that later. So I have to pick them to win this game. I think it's going to be close. I think Houston will score points. But Philly has good pass rushers. I think they'll be able to get after Deshaun Watson. There's going to be that energy in the building in a must-win game. They got Nick Foles going. I think they'll be able to get the run game going eventually. They're going to wear down that Houston front seven. I like the Eagles at home, 27-23.
All right. For me, it's a coin flip. It's a must-win, obviously, but I look at the Eagles' front seven, and it's literally the two sides of the league. One side, you got one of the best defensive lines in football. Other side, you have one of the worst offensive lines we've seen from a 10-win team that we've had in a long time. Deshaun Watson is pressured on 38% of his dropbacks, most in the NFL. So just based on that, I'm just gonna go off my gut and pick the Eagles 27-24.
Okay, so we have similar scores.
Mm-hmm. But it can honestly go either way.
And when Philly establishes the run, which I think they eventually will, as they start to wear down that Houston front late in the game, they're going to be able to go into that play action. And Houston is not very good against the pass. They're ranked 26 against the pass. That's way below average. So I think they'll might have some troubles late.
Right.
Once they establish the run.
Mm-hmm. I just think that Foles utilizes Jeffrey a lot better than Wentz does, which is really weird to me. I don't know why.
That's all just chemistry based, I guess. I mean, some quarterbacks click better with other guys than other quarterbacks, so that's just a matter of, I guess, clicking on offense. But I think the Eagles will play like they have their backs against the wall.
100%. I agree with that.
And they'll find a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
On probably the lag of Jake Elliott, but
probably
the 27-23. We'll see.
Yep.
What's our next game?
Next game on my list is Steelers at New Orleans.
All right, you go first.
Steelers are 6-point underdog in this game. The most interesting part of this game is the Saints' offense has been dipping as of late. They don't look the same. But that's just a side story. The key here is Ben Roethlisberger. He can't turn the ball over in this game. You can't throw 3 interceptions and beat a Super Bowl contender like this on the road. Just not going to happen. So I look at the turnover differential in this game as the deciding factor. I think the Saints will pull it out. I think it's going to be lower scoring than a lot of people might think because these defenses have been surging as of late. We just saw the Steelers hold the Patriots to 10 points. So I'm picking the Saints to win 23-20.
Before last week, I said, everyone knew it, but I said in our last podcast that Pittsburgh must beat New England because they're going to have no chance whatsoever at beating New Orleans. Now, I kind of changed on that. I think they do have a punching chance at beating New Orleans. However, I don't think it's going to happen. I'll be honest. I think New Orleans is going to win this game 31-23. New Orleans, they've won their last 4 home games by at least 10 points each. They've only failed to score less than 31 points in all but once this season at home. They've scored 31 points or more in all but 1 home game this year. Pittsburgh, meanwhile, if you look at their last 2 games on the road, a loss to the Broncos, who are now eliminated from playoff contention, and the terrible Oakland Raiders, a game which I still don't know how they lost. But anyway, they've struggled defensively, especially in the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to come key. Look, if Jalen Samuels can repeat what he did last week, run the ball, keep the Saints offense off the field, and Pittsburgh defense can come up with anything close to the outstanding performance they put up last week, it'll be close late, and they might have a chance at winning. But do I believe the Steelers keep the No, because I haven't seen them do it yet. And do I believe Jalen Samuels will repeat that 172-yard all-purpose performance against the Patriots? No, because the Saints had the number one run defense. So I think Pittsburgh will keep it late. They might even go up early in this game. But Saints are going to take over late. I mean, they've been virtually unbeatable at home, aside from their Week 1 stunning loss to the Buccaneers. So, yeah, there you go. Hello?
Yeah. 100%, man. What was your final score for that game? What was your
31-23 New Orleans.
All right. I can see that. I definitely think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a runaway for the Saints or vice versa. I think it's just going to be because the Saints still have a lot to play for.
I mean, Pittsburgh, they find ways to be in close games every single week. It's a close game. Aside from that Panthers game, every single week it's like
nail-biter.
Comes down to the last couple of possessions. So
yeah,
I think we'll see that again.
I'll feel you there. With that, we'll move on to our final game. Chiefs at Seahawks. Chiefs are 2.5-point favorites.
That's interesting. You there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, the connection is kind of weird right now, but anyway, this might surprise y'all. And I said it a couple podcasts ago. I said when I was mentioning the Seahawks remaining schedule and how they're going to make a run to finish the season, that's kind of all quieted since they lost to San Francisco on Sunday. That was kind of disappointing. But if you just gave me the box score of that game, and I knew nothing, like not the score, I didn't watch the game. If you just gave me the box score, put it out in front of me on paper, I might have told you, the Seattle won the game. Look, Seattle's one of the best rushing football teams in the league. I think they're top 3. Their defense had been playing really good. It still is. Nick Mullins just had an incredible performance on Sunday. I think that was kind of a fluke. Now they're coming back home to where we just saw them put up a great performance against Minnesota and almost shut Minnesota out before they fired their offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming in with some purpose. I think that 12th man will be a big factor in this game. I think they're going to rattle Patrick Mahomes. They're one of the best in the league at getting to the quarterback. I think it's going to be close, but it's Seattle at home. I think this is the game where kind of Russell Wilson has that signature late game moment that we kind of see him have every year in a game.
Mm.
I think Seattle will probably, Chiefs are going to struggle some point in this game on offense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think Seattle's going to win it, game-winning field goal late, 28-25.
For me, I kind of am saying some of the same things, but just the opposite. I think this is the game where Patrick Mahomes confirms his MVP trophy. This is the game. I'm kind of thinking like the Seahawks are gonna come out firing early, maybe go up big, and then it'll be a lot like that Patriots game where the Chiefs just come creeping back. And then I'm picking the Chiefs. I think the final score is going to be 33-31. I think definitely the Seahawks can go up big early, but I just think Patrick Mahomes is in that offense are still able to weather the storm. And I think Spencer Ware is better than people give him credit for. It's not like they're going to have no running game now that Kareem Hunt is gone.
Mm-hmm. I think they still have a running game, and I think they're still going to score points. I just think I look at a Chiefs defense, which has gone their team has gone 2-2 in the past 4 games, but in that stretch, they're surrendering 35 points per game, which is not good at all. Their defense is struggling. Seattle's defense has been good as of late. Top 5 in the league, I would argue. So I think they're going to get to Mahomes some point. And look, I'll say this. I think this game is going to come down to who wins the turnover battle. If Seattle wins the turnover battle, they're going to win. If Kansas City can force Russell Wilson into some boneheaded mistakes that we've seen him make, they'll win this game. But it's going to be interesting. I think this is the most intriguing game of this week.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Monday Night Football, everyone's going to be watching. And it has large playoff implications. If the Chiefs lose this game and the Chargers win, we're looking at the Chargers in the 1 seed. So
yeah, and then the Chiefs doing all that beginning of the season just to fall to the 5 seed at the end.
They've done all this year. Surprised everyone at the beginning. They're very good. They've done all this. It'd be very disappointing if they ended up having to go on the road in the playoffs, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So with that said, do you want to go into how you think the playoffs are going to turn out? Or
for me, I think for the NFC, I think it's going to go Saints, Rams, Bears, and then the 4 seed. I don't know. I'm a Cowboys fan, but the Eagles looked really good last game. I'm still gonna pick the Cowboys though because I'm biased. So those are my top 4. For 5 and 6. Ooh, I see the Vikings making it. I think they're a lock now that they're running the football. And then the 6 seed, it could go to the Seahawks. I think they have the best shot at getting that seed. They have the best team out of the teams that are competing for that wild card. But this Chiefs game is a huge game. For sure. Because then you have teams like the Redskins. I don't think they'll make it. And then the Eagles, they're a long shot. Let's be honest. Because they need a lot to happen. What are your takes on that, man?
Well, I
There's
have a lot of notes for how the NFC will play. I don't have as much prepared for the AFC, so I'll do the AFC first, since you did the NFC first.
Mhm.
I kind of did this based on how I think the final 2 weeks of the season are going to play out, and based off my predictions. So the AFC, since I have the Chiefs losing to Seattle, I think the Chargers are going to, and sadly, going to end up getting the 1 seed. Now, Houston right now is in the 2 spot. However, I picked Philly to beat them this week. So I think the Patriots are going to beat the Bills. They're going to have a big bounce-back game at home. Texans are going to lose this week. Maybe even they'll probably win next week, but they're going to lose this week. And the Patriots are going to sneak into the 2 seed.
Ooh, that's a problem.
However, I don't think they're going to go anywhere in the playoffs, but we can have that conversation for a different day. I think Houston still gets the 3 seed. They'll still win the division. I don't know. Have they already won the division? I'm not really sure, but I think they have.
I think they did win.
They'll still get the 2 seed or 3 seed. I think Pittsburgh is going to hold on to the division. Again, I'm biased, but I think they're still going to hold on to the division. Barely get the 4 seed. Sadly enough for my Steelers, I think the Chiefs are going to get the 5 seed. Largely because I think they're going to lose to Seattle this week. But that will be a very interesting wildcard game if that indeed plays out. Kansas City at Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then the 6, it might surprise you, and I know I don't like Baltimore. I think Baltimore's a very good team, but I think they have 2 very losable games down the stretch. Of course, they play the Chargers this week, and then they play the Browns. I think that game's on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 2 games they could either both win or both lose. I think the Colts are going to end up edging them for the final wildcard spot. I really like how the Colts are playing. They're getting the run game going. Their defense has been fantastic. They have one of the best emerging linebackers in the league.
Mm-hmm.
What's that guy's name? I forget.
Ooh, yeah. You just killed us last week. I should know, but I don't know. I'm not thinking of it
They're
right now.
doing a good job stopping the run. They're creating pressure on opposing quarterbacks. They're running the football. Andrew Luck has been fantastic. He's definitely probably deserves some consideration, even though he's not going to win.
Yeah, the 1-5 start kind of killed
But the
it.
biggest thing I look at with the Colts is they've totally transformed their offensive line. I think that's been the biggest difference this year.
Yeah.
Look, their defense is playing way ahead of schedule as far as development goes, but I think that offensive line has been key this year. I think they're going to end up edging Baltimore out for the 6th seed in the AFC. So, yeah, it's kind of mixed up, my AFC predictions, but I had to have some fun with it, and that's what I came up with.
I agree with you there, man. The Colts, to me, are the perfect example of coaching and just coaching and scheme changing everything for a defense. Like they have all the same players. They add in a couple rookies, but I mean, if Chuck Pagano was still there, I think their defense would still be trash.
I agree. Frank Reich has done an incredible job with this team. Fringe Coach of the Year candidate, but I still think either Nagy or someone else will end up snagging that from him. But you should definitely be talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do your AFC predictions? Do you have them laid out, or you want me to go ahead and do the NFC? Because I have a lot to say about the NFC.
I'll go ahead and say the AFC then.
Okay.
Since you have a lot for the NFC. I have the Chiefs holding on to the 1 seed.
Okay.
Because I have them beating the Seahawks. But again, that's a coin flip.
Keep going.
And then another place for I think the Texans will hold on to the 2 seed,
Okay.
and then New England will be 3, and then I have your Steelers at 4 still,
Okay.
and then 5 the Chargers will retain their spot, and then 6. I originally had the Ravens, but I forgot about the Colts. That they which weren't a team I was thinking about. And you're right. They're playing the Chargers and the Browns. And the Browns are red hot right now. That's a tough game. That's a trap game.
Mm-hmm.
So
even if they do beat the Chargers, they could easily lose to the Browns and shoot themselves in the foot and be knocked out of the playoffs
again on the last game.
Yeah.
2 years in a row. But yeah, I think I will go with the Colts. I don't think the Titans will make it. I just don't think they're good.
They have too many injuries.
And then
Miami's looked
They look bad.
Yeah,
they're just
their loss to the Vikings. And then whoever else is there. I think the Browns are still there in contention, but they
need a lot though.
Things that have to go right for them to make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a long shot.
Yeah.
But if they win out, then I mean that's still a really good season for them, you know. So go ahead and say your NFC. I'm interested to hear what you have to say there.
Well,
because I feel like I was
because I think there's more like scenarios that could go on in terms of seeding with the AFC, but I think there's more storylines in the NFC. Now,
right.
I'll start with my number 1 seed, the New Orleans Saints. Look, I think they're going to get the 1 seed. I think they'll probably win out. I predicted them to beat the Steelers, as much as it hurts me to say it, and they're going to beat the Panthers again because Panthers are resting Cam Newton, and I don't think they beat him anyway. Look, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about New Orleans that their offense has fallen off as of late.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because they've been in the midst of a 3-game road trip, and the bottom line is their offense isn't as good on the road as it is at home.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the bottom line. That's why I think it's very critical that New Orleans wins as soon as possible and locks up the top overall seed in the NFC. If you look at Drew Brees' stats, home versus away, at home, completes 79% of his passes. I know that's incredible.
Yeah, that's insane.
1,925 yards, 20 touchdowns, and only 1 interception.
Wow.
Drew Brees on the road. Now, these are still incredible stats for any other quarterback in the league, but it's a significant drop off. Only completes 71% of his passes.
Holy.
But that is a 7% drop off.
Yeah,
it's still very high.
True.
But it's still a significant drop off.
Mm-hmm.
For 1,731 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. And to be honest, they just kind of get rattled on the road.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Their offense hasn't been as good as it is at home. Look, but what they do have is a good running game with Kamara and Ingram, and a great, good top 10 defense. The old cliche says a good running game and a good defense travel in the NFL. They have both of those, and that's a formula to win in January and February. They have the 8th ranked rushing offense and the number 1 rushing defense. So I just think they're going to get the 1 seed. There's no problem there. It's just very critical that they get it, because I think if they did have to go on the road at some point in the playoffs, their Super Bowl chances would dip a little bit. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure.
Now the Rams. This is what I have the most to say. Look, Colin Cowherd's right. They peaked too early, and they're really struggling right now. I think they're going to rebound and win their last 2 games because they're playing the Cardinals and the 49ers. Both at Arizona on the road and San Francisco at home. Still, I think they'll win both of those games, and I think they'll get their offensive mojo going into the playoffs, and that's why I think they'll hold on to the 2 seed. But if you look at the past 3 games, Jared Goff has as many turnovers in the past 3 games as he did in the first 11 games of this season. He has 8 turnovers in the past 3 games. Entering Week 13, Jared Goff had a passer rating of 113.5. The past 3 weeks, he's only completing 55% of his passes for 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions with the 51 passer rating. That is horrible. One of the worst in the league. Look, they've only converted 9 of their last 30 third downs. They're really struggling converting third downs. They've only had 3 plays of over 25 yards in the past 3 weeks. They had 36 of those plays, 36 such of those plays in the first 11 games. So their offense is not really explosive. Jared Goff is turning the ball over. Their defense is suspect at best. They're one of 5 teams to give up 30 or more points in 5 games this season, along with Tampa Bay, Cincinnati, Oakland, and Miami. Look, their defense is suspect. Their quarterback is struggling. Their offense as a whole is struggling because their quarterback's struggling. They need to get something fixed in these next 2 games against bad teams, or else they could be looking for another early exit out of the playoffs. At number 3, I have Chicago. I make the argument that Chicago is better than the Rams. I think they are.
Yeah, I think so too. And they're peaking.
They're peaking at the right time.
Actually,
Los Angeles
I don't think they've even peaked yet. I think they're going to peak.
Exactly. But I make the argument they're better than they are better than the Rams right now. Look, they don't have the hardest schedule, but they do have 2 road games to finish the season. They're at San Francisco and they're at Minnesota. I think they'll beat San Francisco easily this week, and they'll probably even beat Minnesota next week. Now, the thing with Chicago, when you look at their schedule, it hasn't been that tough. They have, They have 7 wins. Against 7 of their 10 wins are against teams below 500. They only have 3 wins against current playoff teams, but their defense is legit. Bottom line, nothing else to say.
Yeah.
Look, over the past decade, only 4 defenses have recorded 35-plus takeaways and 45-plus sacks in the same season. The 2010 Giants, the 2010 Steelers, who went to the Super Bowl but lost to the great Aaron Rodgers, the 2013 Chiefs, and this team, the 2018 Bears. They rank 3rd in overall defense, 2nd in run defense, only allowing 83 yards per game, and 10th in pass defense, only allowing 227 yards per game. And they're 1st in takeaways. They make you turn the ball over. They've forced 35 turnovers so far this season, 26 interceptions, and 9 forced fumbles. So their defense is legit. Some games you're going to come in saying, well, the offense only needs to score about 17, 20 points in order to win because that's how good the defense is. Chicago, I think, is playing the best football in the NFC right now as of currently, and I think they're better than the Rams, but they're going to end up in the 3 seed due to unfortunate circumstances. But watch out in the playoffs. Dallas at 4. Now, they also have an easy schedule coming in. Tampa Bay and the Giants. They should win both those games. I think they will. But here's an interesting thing I think Dallas needs to do more of. And I know you're going to say, well, you put this player more injury risk.
Yeah, I agree with you, though. I already know what you're going to say.
But I think Dak Prescott needs to run the ball more. Is that what you think I was going to say?
Yeah.
Let me just say the stats, okay? Look, they lost in a shutout to the Colts, but in that game, Dak Prescott had no rushing attempts. It's just the third time in his career where Dak Prescott had no rushing attempts. The Cowboys are 1-2 in those games. Their only victory, and I'm just going to say it because I'm a Steelers fan, was against Pittsburgh, in Pittsburgh, in that game a couple of years ago.
I remember that.
You remember that game, I do too. For different reasons. But anyway.
Yeah.
In his 46 career games in the NFL, Dak Prescott has scored 17 rushing touchdowns. In those 17 games where he had rushes for a touchdown, the Cowboys are 14-3, and they outscored their opponents by over 150 points. In every game this season where Dak Prescott has scored a rushing touchdown, the Cowboys are 4-1. They beat in Jacksonville, Philly, Atlanta, and Washington. So, look, it puts Dak Prescott at more risk for injury, but if you look at it, staying healthy is one of the things Dak Prescott's been good at so far in his career.
Mm-hmm.
If you can even add like a couple more design runs for him per game, it doesn't have to be a lot.
Right.
Just a couple more, just to even give the defense the thought of him running the ball.
Right.
It's going to open up so many more options.
Right.
For him offensively.
And he'll be able to, even if you do 1 or 2 read option plays, he'll be able to hold the defensive end. So instead of 10 on 11 blocking, you got 10 on 10.
Yeah, just like that read option with him and Zeke, I think that would open up so much more as far as the passing game goes, but it also make defenses worry more.
Right.
That's just my suggestion to the Cowboys, but since they have an easy schedule and a good defense, aside from last week, they're going to win out and I think hold on to the division, get the 4 seed. All right. I need to stop talking so much because my throat's starting to hurt, but let me finish up. Seattle at 5. I'm higher, I'd say, than most people I know on Seattle, even though they just lost to San Fran. That was a bad loss, but anyway, I'm picking them to beat Kansas City. I think they'll beat Arizona at home the last week. I think they'll win out, finish 10-6, make the playoffs as a 5 seed. Look, here's my key for Seattle. Doug Baldwin's been banged up. And I think 3 or 4 games this season they've been missing him. And when he's off the field, Russell Wilson is not the same. Look, Baldwin is having an off year for a player of his standards.
Yeah.
He only has 41 receptions for 465 yards and 4 touchdowns. And all 4 of those touchdowns have come in the last 4 games. Never in his career has he had fewer than 66 receptions in the past 4 years. So his numbers are not all that impressive. But as far as Wilson goes, Wilson's numbers take a significant hit when Baldwin is not on the field. When he's on the field, Wilson completes 69% of his passes on 8.57 yards per attempt, 25 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and has a rating of 125.2.
Wow, that's really.
Those are MVP numbers. Now, when he's off the field, it's not so great. He completes 60% of his passes, 6.97 yards per attempt, 6 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. So the touchdown to interception ratio closes and only has a passer rating of 85. Those are average numbers. Those are average quarterback numbers. Right. But when you look at him with Baldwin on the field, those are MVP numbers.
Right.
So,
and the fact that he missed the Pro Bowl is just laughable to me.
and it's something that they really can't control. They just need to hope he's healthy enough to go every week because it really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. He had a knee injury early in the season.
Even though you really don't see it in his numbers, you see it in Russell Wilson's numbers, and that's all that matters.
And you still, he's still the go-to guy for Russell Wilson.
Yeah. And then, look, I did it because I predicted the games in such a manner that kind of I had to do this. I was forced to do it because of my predictions. I have Philly getting the 6th seed.
Ooh.
I don't think they're going to win in the playoffs. I think they'll, in my scenario, they're playing the Bears on the road. I think they get pushed around in that game. The Bears will win big, but I think they are going to sneak in. I see them beating the Texans, as I mentioned earlier, and I think they're going to beat a Washington team next week, even though that game is losable on the road. I think they're going to – look, they need some help, but all they can do is take care of their business.
Right.
They can't control what other teams are doing, and I think it's just going to play out where Philly sneaks in. I'm not very high on Minnesota. Look, I know they had a good performance against Miami, but Miami's defense is below.
Yeah.
An interesting thing interesting stat I read earlier is on tight end Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was held below 40 yards for just the fourth time this season, but the second consecutive week last week. Before these last two games, in which he managed to pull in just 8 of his 15 targets, Ertz was on pace to finish with 124 receptions, which would have put him fifth most all time in the season. He is now on pace for 115 receptions, which would still put him in the top 20 for receptions in a season and break Jason Witten's single season record for receptions by a tight end when he had 110 a couple years ago. So it's just an interesting stat.
Yeah.
Interesting to see how Nick Foles, his numbers compare with Nick Foles and Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
I think they need to keep on utilizing him. He's been great. I didn't even realize how great he's been until now. But I think things will play out the right way for the Eagles, and they're going to get in.
But, yeah, I'll say it right now, man. He's the best in the NFL.
You think?
100%.
All right.
Gronkowski's a shell of himself. Olsen's always hurt. Kittle is young. He'll get better. But to me, he's the best tight end in the league. I might be forgetting somebody, but
I think Kelsey.
Oh, Kelsey, that's who I'm forgetting.
I think Travis Kelsey probably have to put above him, but I put him close second.
Okay.
1B.
Yeah, you can flip flop the two.
Yeah.
I just think right this second.
For sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. You had the Vikings falling out of the playoffs. I know they play the Bears at home week 17, but their matchup this week, I don't think it was that bad. Let me see. I have it pulled up right here. They play. Hold on. Where is it?
Detroit? Is that what it is?
Yeah, they play Detroit, at Detroit.
Okay.
So you never know. I think you're right. They probably will lose to the Bears, but seeing that it's at home, and I think their defense has turned the corner, and also the fact that they're running the football now, it's going to make things a lot better for these receivers. They were throwing it like with DeFilippo, they were throwing it sometimes over 40 times per game, which is just I think they were just overestimating what Kirk Cousins was. Kirk Cousins is not a guy that's going to sling it all over the field and just be able to throw the entire game. You need to have a running game with him, and you need to run the play action, because from there he's a really accurate passer, and that's where he'll be his most effective, throwing 30 times or less.
Yeah, I think they will beat Detroit. I didn't really look at their remaining schedule when I was doing this. But I didn't know they had to play Chicago on the road. I think they're going to lose that game because I don't think they're going to have the success of running the ball against Chicago, nearly the success they had running the ball against Chicago that they did against Miami. But
that Chicago game's at home, so it's not in Chicago. Because remember the Sunday Night Football was in Chicago earlier this year.
I still think Chicago's going to win either way.
All right.
I don't think, even though the Vikings are at home, I don't think they're going to have – I just don't think they're going to win. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to –
All right. I can definitely see where you're coming from. Maybe it's just the Cowboys fan part of me that just doesn't want the Eagles to succeed. Maybe that's just what's coming out right now. I'll just stop. But that's it with our NFL predictions. We're hitting hour and 26 minutes here. I wanted to throw in some Anthony Davis trade rumors talking here. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that before we wrap this up.
Yeah, look, there's been talk that, like last night I heard, there was a Giannis saying, come to the Bucks.
Yeah.
Obviously the Lakers have been mentioned as a destination for Davis, but I think, I don't know when exactly he's a free agent, but I think for the Pelicans, you're going to eventually have to trade him because you don't want to be left in a situation where he just walks out the door in free agency. You want to get something in return.
Right.
Now, whether that's on the Lakers, LeBron said it'd be amazing to play with Anthony Davis, and I totally agree. I think it'd be awesome, but in terms of the fit there, but someone made a good point earlier when I was watching ESPN. They said until Anthony Davis goes to whoever's in that front office and says, I'm not going to be coming back whenever in free agency, I don't think the Pelicans are going to end up trading him because he's that good. But if it came to the point where this summer the Pelicans offered him that max contract extension, and if Anthony Davis turns that down, then you immediately know, well, if he's not going to take the max for us, he's not going to come back in free agency, whether that's the next – I can't remember which season
2021, I think.
Yeah.
It's a year and a half left on his contract. That's all I know. I think it's the year after this one.
Yeah. If he turns that contract down, then you immediately know he's not coming back, and that's when you flip the switch on a trade and start talking with teams.
Right.
You can fill us in on potential fits. I'm interested to know what you think about that. But my point is for me, it's just all about the situation. Is he going to come back? Is he willing to come back in free agency? Is he willing to stay in New Orleans? If he is, don't trade him. But if he's going to walk out that door, not accept the max contract extension, and if he's not demanding a trade right now, why would you trade him at all?
Right.
Even if it's for some great return. But I'm interested to know what are your thoughts on where he could, potential trade partners besides the Lakers.
Well, the first team that comes to mind for me is the Nuggets. They have a team full of assets, and they could offer a package that features Michael Porter Jr.
That would definitely be.
And that's something that could be intriguing for the Pelicans. And of course, you have the Celtics. They have a ton of assets, but Tatum, and I don't think they want to do it because they they would be dumb to give up on this kid already. He's shown that he might be. But back to the Nuggets. This is a roster filled with just assets to be used in a trade. Malik Beasley, turnover ratio in the NBA right now.
That'd definitely be intriguing.
It's and just think of a front court with Jokic and Davis. That's lethal.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
Yep. No other way to put it.
So that's just me. In terms of other teams, obviously there's a ton of teams that would want Anthony Davis, but in terms of having the assets to get him,
yeah, that's the thing.
It's tough. If a bad team were to offer draft picks, that'd be something. But why would a bad team want him? Because they have the risk of him not re-signing. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
A bad team that might just do that, might just say screw the rebuild. We're gonna get free agents and we're gonna try to win now. They might offer a package with a Wendell Carter Jr. Maybe even a Denzel Valentine. Maybe throw in a first round pick. Maybe throw in a few picks.
Yeah, the Bulls. That'd definitely be.
That'd be interesting, but that definitely won't happen. I don't think. And then there's teams that are just kind of just like mediocre, you know. I think of the team like the Wizards and think of something they could offer, but they just traded away Kelly Oubre, which to me was probably their best trade asset. To be honest,
Yeah,
because John Wall's contract is just not workable. Beal's is, but to me, you can win with Beal. I think at this point you might want to part ways with Wall because he's proven that his ego might get in the way of the team's chemistry. And I think you might want to move on with Beal if I'm the Wizards. But that's another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
And then of course you got the Rockets. That would be interesting, but they don't have. I don't think they have a good enough package of assets. They don't have enough young talent. You know.
Yeah.
Because if they offered something with Clint Capella, he's not. I mean, he's not really gonna shift. He's not gonna shift the like that. He's young, but he's not gonna. I don't think he'll ever be.
He doesn't have the offensive skills.
Yeah. So with that, I just think top three teams: Lakers, Celtics, Nuggets. Another team that just popped in my head: the Clippers. They could offer Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, couple first-round picks. I don't think they'd want to throw in Tobias Harris, but you could throw in what's his name? Montrezl Harrell. I'm just not thinking of them right now. But yeah, those are my four that kind of pop in my head when you think of this Anthony Davis trade sweepstakes.
Very interesting. I hadn't thought of some of those teams, but look, the biggest thing in this is whether or not he's gonna sign that extension with the Pelicans, and if he doesn't, that's when you pull the trigger.
And part of me has faith that he might resign because nothing that he does suggests that he wouldn't want to be anywhere but New Orleans. Because when you think of Anthony Davis, it just doesn't seem like he doesn't seem like someone like a Paul George that wants to be in a big. Of course, Paul George changed his mind when he went to OKC, but he's a guy that wanted all that stuff in LA, and I just don't see Anthony Davis as a guy that that has that as a top priority. You know, he just wants to win.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't gonna sign the max contract, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And with that, thanks for making it all the way through. It was a long video. This one was might have been one of our longest, hour and 40 minutes almost. Yeah. Subscribe, like button, hit the notification bell so you can get notified when we do our podcast, and follow Nixon, and that's where I put. You're gonna get a tweet like a couple hours before every podcast we do. That's where you're gonna be able to keep up with what we're right now. So
We just kind of go with the flow.
yeah,
When stories come up,
we get on it, right?
we get on it. But now there's a lot, so that's why there's been podcasts lately. But kind of earlier in the year, there wasn't as much going on, and we kind of had periods of time where we didn't do one for maybe 2 weeks. So there's going to be a lot coming, but so look forward to that. But it just depends on.
But again, thank y'all, and peace out.